Okay, so good morning everyone. Maayong buntag sa tanan. So today, the title of our gospel is, hold on, Be Not Afraid. So you might recognize this because it happened maybe just last week, no? So be not afraid. And there are many things here on earth that scare us, no? Basically, a lot of things that are unknown to us. So one of the scariest things to us here on earth is fear of the unknown and fear of things that are larger than us, no? So I thought that this was a quote that was very apt for today, no? Where it states, too many of us are not living our dreams because we are living our fears. And I ran across it last week and I thought, what a nice way to begin our gospel exposition. Kasi if we really think back to how are we living our lives, we limit ourselves by what we fear because we fear a lot of things, no? Physical, emotional, mental. And I think the thing about it is we fear failure and rejection most of all. So we tend to limit ourselves because we always think first before of we succeed, no? We always think first of what if I fail? What if they reject me, etc. So this is how we live our lives. No? It made me really think about it. So when Jesus asked his disciples, no, or sent his disciples forward, they were also scared, no, and we're now in the whole chapter of Matthew, no, is dedicated to this, no, a lot of it. So we're now under this one at the bottom, courage under persecution, which is verse 10:26, verses 10:26 to 33. So we start out with Jesus presenting a rather daunting task that requires risk, no? And I was thinking about what does daunting look like? And daunting for a lot of people is taking a road that you have never gone through before. And there are a lot of huge things that are overlooking you, no? And spaces that you don't know. So there's a little bit of risk because you never know what's going to dart out of behind the tree, no? Or you don't know what is the road ahead because we can't really see the end of the road. We can only see a few meters in front of us. So the task was daunting. And what does this word daunting mean? And daunting means something that is daunting is something that makes you worried because you think it will be very difficult or very dangerous to do. So this goes back to the saying that the quote that I started with. You're thinking first, oh, it's difficult, oh, it's dangerous, so you'd rather not do it. But Jesus sent his disciples and chose 12 apostles to go forward and do his work. And what was the daunting task? And the daunting task was the call to proclaim Jesus before others. No, and they had to proclaim Jesus not as the earth saw him as or wanted him to be, no, as king, no, because from an earthly point of view, Jesus should have been victorious. He should have been riding in victory into a city. He should have been crowned. He should have been in a palace. And yet we have this king of ours who was crucified, who at that time when he was crucified, crucifixion was really a very shameful punishment. No, it was a very shameful death. So how do you go out and proclaim a king who died a very shameful death according to earthly standards? So the task was scary and daunting, and against everything that, or it was against everything that the disciples and the apostles knew to be associated with power and victory and saving people. So Jesus takes time in these verses to explain fear, no? And it's divided into two sections. One, he discusses unnecessary fear. And this unnecessary fear is what they said is sweating the small stuff. But for us, no, who are losing it, it's not exactly small stuff, because it is the loss of life as we know it. It is getting out of our comfort zone and possibly losing our life, no, here on earth, and that is what the apostles and the disciples experienced. And yet we read many stories of the first Roman martyrs who faced down, no, lions and many other beasts in the Roman Colosseum and still called on God, no? So they got over their unnecessary fear because there was something stronger that was and more important to them than being fearful of actually being torn apart by beasts or being subjected to torture, no, by people who wanted to stamp out what they were proclaiming, because they had what Jesus called the necessary fear. So rather than fear him who can destroy, rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in Gehenna or in hell, no? And this is referring really to God, because only God can destroy our soul. No? Our soul came from God, and therefore, as our creator, he's the only one who can destroy it. Not even the devil can destroy our soul. No, he can torture it for sure. Yeah, but he cannot destroy it. So really, this talks about the only kind of fear that we should have, which is fear, no, or respect for our creator. And God balances, no, that by saying, okay, if you give your life, no, and you go out and proclaim me, you have that reassurance that I care for you, most of all because I care for all my creatures, and I care for the most ordinary, the smallest, the most, you look out your window, we see it, no, we call these birds sometimes Maya. I've taken so many pictures of these birds. We call it ano ba to? In the Philippines, it has a yellow breast, and it's an ordinary garden bird. You call it the bulbul, no? And that's the name of the bird, no? And he cares for all of these birds all over the earth. And when they fall to the ground, he knows it. So what more of us who are made in his image, no? He cares for us, and he has reassured us in the Bible that he knows us. No, he holds us in the palm of his hand, and he knows us and every hair that is on our head. And for those who are senior, he also knows every hair that falls to the ground. Now, the call is really to proclaim Jesus before others. And even if Jesus has reassured us, there is still a fear in us, because one is, do we know how to proclaim Jesus? Do we know how others will react to us? And Jesus said, yes, you will be rejected. There will be people who will not listen to you. So he said in the previous verses that if the people are not worthy, or you judge them worthy, not worthy to listen to the word, then shake off the dust from your sandals and move on. And he said, if there are people who persecute you, then flee to another town, because there will be people who are hungry. And when I was thinking about this, I said, we're given all of this teaching, the same way that Jesus was given the teaching gave the teaching to his disciples. Now, what are we going to do with this teaching? Do we keep it just for ourselves? But Jesus tells us that we need to share it with others, not because also that, well, one is he wants the word spread, but it's our responsibility and the best way to thank Jesus, to be able to share the knowledge, no, to teach others, to take this teaching and be teaching and be a teacher to others, to be the kind of light that Jesus is to us. And so with all of this that we have learned in the gospel exposition, there is really a responsibility to go out and share it, because there are other people outside. We may not know them, we may not have met them yet or seen them, but like us, they will also be hungry for the word of Christ. So when we go out and proclaim Jesus, it's very important for us to look at the word that is used, no? And it's a Greek word, and well, I looked up the pronunciation, and well, what I found was homologian, homologian. Sorry, is to confess Jesus. So it's not just to announce, okay? It is to confess Jesus. And what does confessing Jesus mean? It talks about our relationship with God. To confess Jesus is to be aware that we are sinful, to be aware that God saves us all the time, and to praise God for his mercy. To confess or acknowledge Jesus is to bind us, no, to what we believe. And so we are proclaiming not just the words that Jesus said, because that would just be an announcer, but what we are proclaiming is what we believe in and how the words that will shape our lives and will guide our lives. So it is a binding thing. It is a commitment. So what we are declaring or what we are proclaiming is that which are the words that describe our commitment to God. And to acknowledge God is to honor him. So when we do this, Jesus assures us that in the final judgment, when we leave the earth and we go up to heaven, hopefully, Jesus assures us that he will act as our friendly witness during the final judgment. No, he says he will know us and he will acknowledge us and he will speak for us when we stand before God in judgment. So I chose this particular visual because remember there's a saying that you cannot enter unless you are like a little child. And it always used to confuse me, but now I think it's because when we leave this earth and we go on to the next, we're like little children. We don't know anything of that world. We are innocent, and God will send, no, or he will come himself to pick us up and guide us into that new world. So he tells us, no, be not afraid. Why shouldn't we not be afraid? Because he's always beside us, he's always behind us, he's always carrying us. So our job is to confess Jesus, carry on his work without fear, and always know that God will take care of us. So right now, the words, the readings at a glance would read, we should fear offending God. more than those who sow terror and threaten us, no? And who ostracize us. God abounds in Jesus. Grace abounds in Jesus. Quenching our thirst. This comes from the book of Romano Guardini, The End of the Modern World. Loneliness in faith will be terrible because there will be a lot of people who will go away from us because of our faith and the passion with which we talk about our faith. Love will disappear from the face of the public world, but the more precious will that love be which flows from one lonely person to another, involving courage of the heart, born from the immediacy of the love of God as it was made known in Christ. So the visual I chose for this was how we were during the pandemic, because we were all very lonely, and the only way we could express love was through technology, no, through Zoom. And even today, because of COVID that still is here, many times Zoom has now become a regular way to connect with each other and express love to each other when we are far apart. No, there are only a few times when we can really be together, like last weekend. No, that was rare and that was very precious. But even these times when we are together, it is precious to us. Now, for me, I guess to share, have I ever been scared by a task that God has presented me? And I would say yes. And I think the scariest was many, many years ago when I first was with Dilab, no? There were many experiences that I got exposed to. And I think one of the scariest was doing a workshop for the Visayan bishops. I always remember the mass where Father Melo had asked me to attend. And they all read the gospel. And rather than say a homily, because it was all bishops, they decided that after the homily, they were going to spend 5 minutes of meditation, no, in meditation. So me being the only the only lay person there, I was wondering, what are they doing? Is there something that I'm not doing correctly? And by the time communion came, all of them went up to the altar because all of them were concelebrating. So I was wondering, okay, how am I supposed to receive communion? Buti na lang, Father Melo went down and gave me communion. But it was rather, I would say it was rather daunting for me to be there, part of the experience. And that's when I felt most unworthy of God's love. And yet I was able to do the workshop, and that's probably God's mercy and God's saving grace. It obviously wasn't me, no? So there will be many tasks that will be presented, some larger, some smaller, that will take us out of our comfort zone, no? That will make us leave maybe physical comfort, emotional, and mental comfort, no? Um, there was a time I was not used to going out, no, and meeting the recovering drug addicts, but I went because it was part of Dilaab, and I knew that it was part of my commitment, no, and my commitment to God was to work in His vineyard, and I couldn't afford to let fear take over me. So what brought me through that was the assurance that no matter how turbulent the waters I went through, no, and that those can be the rapids. In my mind, I always had this vision of a kayak, no, that was overturned with the paddler underneath, no, underneath the water. But for the expert paddlers, they always manage to turn themselves right side up and at the end of the rapids, they always come to gentle shores. So I would always tell myself that if God sent me out to do something, um, he didn't, he wouldn't allow me to be harmed, and he would always bring me back to gentle shores. And that's how I've done my work with the lab for all these years, and even the work outside. So, sharing our cup, whom do I fear more, man or God? What moment in my life was my faith in God or Christ tested, and how did I respond? Thank you.